Alright guys, this is a walkthrough of the practice free response question from chapter 10 that has to do with two-dimensional arrays, and we'll also have some lists in this free response question as well. I'm going to approach this with the free response, the problem solving process that we've been using in class. If it helps you, that's fantastic. Once again, if you've got a better one, we'd appreciate if you share it with us. But this is what we have so far. Basically going to break this down, this problem solving process, into three parts. The first part, we're going to identify the tasks that need to be completed. And this particular free response question, there was a lot to be done. And I've kind of summed it up into 9 different parts. It specifically states that you need to create a class with a specific name. And it's usually implied that we're going to have a main method, but this one actually comes right out and says you're going to have a main method. But even if it didn't, we'd still want to have a main method. All of our Java programs need to have a main method. In addition to that, it specifies that we need to create a 4x3 array, 4 rows, 3 columns, and not only that, we need to initialize it with very specific values, have names of characters from Hamlet. And in addition to that, it all needs to happen in a single statement. We also need to create a method named even or odd, and that method must be called from within the main method, which means that we're going to have to pass that array that we create in the main method. We're going to have to pass it over to the even or odd method, which means we need to create parameters to receive that. And based on the code that I've looked at so far, that's not going to be a waste of time for us to actually review some of that. We will spend some time in class reviewing the header for a method and how to properly set up the parameters. I'm not going to do that in this video. I do anticipate doing that in class and creating a different video because I think that would actually be worthwhile. Continuing on with this, it specifically says that we need to use for loops to determine if elements if all the elements are either even or odd in length. And if it's even in length, we need to replace it with the word even. If it's odd in length, we need to replace it with the word odd. And we're doing that inside of the even or odd method. Also going to create a how many method. This method is also going to be called from within the main method. And we're going to need to pass the array over to it, which means we need to create the parameters that will hold that. Now, inside the how many method, we're going to create 2 lists that specific your instructions specifically require you to create 2 lists with specific names: odd elements and even elements. And once again, we'll be using for loops to determine if an element contains even or odd. Just means we're going to be traversing through the array, looking at each element, looking at the contents, and this is where we're going to be looking or using string methods. This particular method we're going to be using is going to be the equal method. And then once we're finished up, we're going to display the contents of both of those lists. Now, those are the tasks that need to be completed. Now, the data structures, 2D array is kind of that's the glaring one. That's what the whole focus of this is about: the two-dimensional array and how to use it, how to retrieve information, look at information, change the information, that sort of thing. The array is going to be 4 rows, 3 columns, and we also need to create 2 lists. 2 array lists, one named even elements, one named odd elements, and what we're going to be putting inside of those are the index values, the locations within the array for the even and odd elements. Now, the other methods that we're going to use, string methods, we're going to be using the length method. We're also going to be using the equals method. I did not put the equals in there, but we're going to be using it. The array list, we're going to use the add method, the size method, and because we're using array list, we also have to use import statements at the top. We just need an if-else statement. We don't need anything other than an if-else. We're going to use that inside both the methods that we're going to be creating, the even or odd and the how many. And then when it's all done, inside that how many method, we're going to create a very not a very complex. We're going to create a somewhat complex concatenated string to print out. And that is pretty much it. I went over that real fast, and as you get more practice, you won't have to actually write all this stuff down. It will actually make more sense to you. But I'm encouraging you, if you get confused, you ever get to a point you don't know what to do next, stop, back up, start with whichever one of these 3 steps will make the most sense to you, and just start writing stuff down and organizing your thoughts. That's going to be a whole lot better than just staring at your page wondering what you can do. All right. So let's take it from the top, and I'm going to walk you through all this. I'm not going to make you watch me type. I've already got it all typed out, but I'm going to take it line by line and explain everything we have. Starting with lines 1 and 2, we have the import statements. You should be used to that. That comes from the list and array list, so we can use the array list. Then we're declaring the public class practice as we were instructed to do. Main method starts on line 6. And I declare my 2-dimensional array on line 8. Remember, we're supposed to do all this in declare it, create it, initialize it all in one single statement. And that one statement starts on line 8 and goes down to line 11. Notice that my first semicolon is right here. So that ends the statement. All this is a single statement. Looking at the code some of you have been turning in, it seems like maybe you have a little bit of a misunderstanding of what we mean by a single statement. Some of you thought it meant a single statement for each process, a single statement for declare, a single statement for create, and a single statement for initializing. That's not what it means. One single statement. Line 12 and 13 we'll come back to. Those are the calling statements. I got to create the methods before we can call them. That makes sense. Or you're just going to write the 2 lines and then go create your methods. So the first one, even or odd method, starts on line 17. No, the names do not have to be the same. This is a container for data. This is a container for data. This container is being passed over to this container. They're 2 separate containers. Even if they have the same name, they're still 2 separate containers. Now inside even or odd, I have my nested for loop. I think most everybody is okay. They finally got this down through a lot of practice. You understand how these nested for loops are working, which takes us down into line 23, where I'm starting my logic on this. Just a simple if-else structure. I'm checking to see if it's going to be even or if it's odd using modulus division. If I use modulus division, divide by 2, and it's 0, then it's divisible by 2, which means it's even. If it's not even, it can only be one other thing, and that's odd, and that's why I don't need another condition. It's just an if-else. And that's all there is. I don't have to return a value. I don't have to do anything else. This is actually overriding the array that is that's being passed. So that's done. Now let's go to line 34. Once again, it's public, it's static because it's being accessed by the class, it's being called from within the class. I don't need an object. Void because I'm not returning a value. And then it's going to receive a string array, and I'm just calling it temp array. Actually, just a note here, maybe possibly to help you out. This is I called it temp names because when it receives it, I'm passing str names. It's receiving the names, but during this method, the contents are being changed from actual names to the words even or the word odd. So by the time we get down here, it's no longer names. So just for clarification, or actually to put emphasis on that point, I called it temp array instead of temp names. Line 36 and 37, I'm creating the strings. No, I'm creating the list. I'm creating the list, and I'm using string data types. Yes, this list, this array list, is going to hold the index value for the elements. However, I'm not setting this up as integers because I need it to hold more than just numbers. I need it to hold both the row value and the column value. And to be able to do this, I want it to be a string. Now, got the nested for loops, and my logic starts on line 43. I'm checking, I'm using the equals method to determine whether or not the element holds the word odd. If the element does hold the word odd on line 44, this is what I'm actually adding to my odd elements list. I'm adding brackets, square brace, the value, close it off with a brace, and then the column. You can see how that's actually going to look. You get a decent representation of how it's going to look inside the list, and this is why I need it to be a string, because I'm putting more than just numbers in there. Now, if it doesn't hold the value, if it doesn't hold the word odd, then it has to be holding the word even, and so I don't need a condition. I just go to the else, and I put my values in there, and then it's done. With that, I come down to line 51. I start printing out the array. I start printing out the elements. This is where I have a somewhat complex, I've just noticed I misspelled the word there. There we go. There are, because I did some copy and paste, there we go. All right, there are, and I'm using the size method from the list to determine or to return to me the number of items, the number of elements in the list, and then concatenating more words, setting it up to print out the entire list, and then doing the same thing with the evens. So let's go ahead and run that. I've already compiled it. I've already tested it out. It works when I test it. Let's see if it works now. There we go. It actually did work. So there are 7 elements in the odd list. They are, and there's the locations. And then there are 5 elements in the evens list. They are, and there's the locations. I hope this helps you if you've been stuck. Watch this as many times as you think necessary, and give me feedback and let me know if these are actually helping you or what I can do different to make them even better. Thanks.